Where do I start? So I don't know whether I want to start with what turned out to be the worst thing in the week, which was what this video was supposed to be about, which is TNA Bound for Glory, or whether, I mean, not anything else, but practically anything else. So, because I'll probably talk about them more in the week, because they happened on indie shows, or at least what we classify on here as indie, even though it's looking more and more like New Japan isn't an indie, and all the companies that are all sort of, cahoot's the wrong word, but in relationships with WWE, overshadowing everything that Impact did. So, the first bit, Triple H randomly showing up at ICW. That was the first thing that I saw, because it happened this afternoon, because WWE was doing a show later on in the evening in the same city or whatever. But him, you know, Pete Dunne sort of expected, because he's been in ICW stuff before, but then just Triple H randomly showing up actually on a show. It's like, okay. You could tell even the fans were like, okay, we're being worked here. And then when he came through the curtain, everyone was like, what? So yeah, pretty big. And then the news, I was supposed to be watching this show, and I fell asleep right during the introduction because I've been up all night with the UFC stuff. That's the other one, I forgot about that. And yeah, the big news was that Jay White is the Switchblade guy and is facing Tanahashi. That should have been the big news. But it got overshadowed by Monsieur Omega, who successfully retained the US title against Beretta, and then said clearly there's no challengers. And then, after saying his goodbye and good night thing with his hand gestures, the arena went dark and a video started playing with a countdown, but not with obvious music, for obvious reasons. And then here showed up Chris Jericho. And Jericho basically said he claims to be, you know, the best in the world, but I'm the true best in the world. So, it's basically led to Wrestle Kingdom having Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho for the IWGP US title at Wrestle Kingdom on January the 4th. That's on top of the other stuff that is in from the Japanese stuff, which is obviously Okada versus Naito. By the looks of it, Cody Rhodes versus Kota Ibushi. But that could change considering Final Battle and everything. The Young Bucks taking on Sho and Yo. You know, the Tempura Boys, Roppongi 3.0, I want to call it. I don't know whether they made it clear for the tag stuff. Marty Scurll, who's the new champ, defending against Kushida, Will Ospreay, and Hiromu Takahashi, who apparently in one of the interviews in the build-up to this show, did an interview while he was stuck inside a exercise bench. No, I don't know how he did it either, but the GIF is awesome. It's somewhere on the internet, if you somehow can find it. I know I've saved it to my computer. So yeah, that happened. And that was all sort of the precursor to the night before, with one of the most crazy, awesome UFC cards, at least of this year, possibly in the last few years, give or take. But certainly for 2017, it overshadowed anything that's happened. Especially because, you know, you had the 3 title changes. Joanna Jędrzejczyk dropped her belt on the Ronda Rousey record-breaking defense. The curse of Ronda continues. Also, full props to Cormier just going, Fug Rose! Fug Rose! Just all the time, just like, Fug Rose! Fug Rose! So yeah, Rose Namajunas, the new women's band, women's light, I think it's a women's strawweight champion, from what I remember. Then TJ Dillashaw beat Cody Garbrandt to get back his belt. The irony from that one, though, was the first round was had a last-minute knockdown from Cody on TJ, of which TJ was basically saved by the air horn / bell. So that's how crazy that was. And then George St. Pierre, GSP versus Michael Bisping. GSP didn't look in great shape and then managed to just get a lucky strike and get the win. And that's on top of crazy stuff happening on the undercard. I'll go into full details, I think, when I get to some of the videos that I'm doing this week, which hopefully will be getting close to the final set of videos I'll be doing before we get back to the live schedule, and then I can actually, you know, prepare for this more easier than I currently am. So all that happened. And then came Impact Bound for Glory, which seemed on paper very enticing. They were teasing stuff with Alberto, which was weird because they just left him out of the stuff and then just randomly, oh yeah, this Saturday we're doing a press conference. That's 24 hours or so before the show, and you're trying to push that he's going to be part of it. And boy, was he a part of it. And then the Taya stuff happened. Taya not being able to make it to the show. It said due to personal reasons, but from what I can understand from the news sites, basically because she is a Canadian citizen and she currently resides in America, obviously with Jomo, or whatever we call him, John Hennigan, Joe He, because Joe Im doesn't make sense. Or Johnny Mundo. I don't know. I know his name's John Hennigan, but like, ugh. Either way, she resides with Johnny at the minute. And basically, there were some fears that if she went to Canada, she wouldn't be let back in, apparently because of President Trump's, like, somewhat tightening on visa restrictions and everything. Which is a bit strange, but you'd have thought they could have dealt with that because they knew that might be an issue if they were going to do it in Canada all along. And keep in mind of the fact, Impact may never be in Orlando again, because Anthem's pretty much going to do it as much as they can in-house from Canada, which led to a whole number of people leaving or getting cut because basically they weren't going to pay them anymore. That's why Stifler and both the Hebners of Bryan and Earl left. That's why Marche Roquette left. That's why I was going to say Rockstar Spud left, but from what I can tell, they got rid of him. It wasn't like he asked for his release, they just cut him. Which is, even to me, even more harsh than with the Emma stuff, because it's like, at least WWE were doing shows where she was actually doing work. The majority of the stuff that Spud has done this year has been not in Impact. They haven't barely used him. The only bit was that Hornswoggle stuff. By the way, you notice he's not shown up again ever since they did that. Whatever that was. So all that happened. Also, from what I remember, there was no sign of an owl tonight. What's that all about? Impact's all about the owl. So there was already sort of a, I don't know, worrying tone about it. So then we get to the actual main thing. The opener was the X Division title match, the 6-way, with Trevor Lee defending against Desmond Xavier, Matt Sydal, Garza Jr., Sonjay Dutt, and P.E. Williams coming out to the old Team Canada music, and the Ottawa fans were massively singing the Canadian national anthem. Pretty good match because it's Impact and because it's X Division. You expect it to be sort of fast-paced and, to some extent, flippy-dippy. And it was. The thing I did like is PT hit, I think, Garza Jr. with a Canadian Destroyer, only for Trevor Lee to throw PT out the ring, steal the pin, and keep the belt. Which sort of soured it for me, because it was like, this would have been the right chance to sort of show that there's a new regime in and everything, because remember, we're still in the early point of this is the first real major show that there is no Jarrett influence on the show at all. You know, Karen's gone, Jeff's away with rehab, GFW's dead. You know, can't even ask where's my gold Jeff anymore. He's probably pawned it all to get into rehab. So, and then of course the fact that it was and that's the other fact that I forgot as well. Taryn Terrell getting kicked out because basically she left the company. So they did all this build up on the TV. And then it's like, yeah, she doesn't work here anymore. And the Rosemary Tie of Valkyrie thing, being First Blood, you know, as I said, that never happened. So in its place came Next, because we had Tyson Dukes, which was great to see him here, but then at the same time I was like, I mean, the only reason I can think he's there is because Smash Wrestling and Anthem and all that. He took on Taiji Ishimori, which they were saying was like getting a number one contender shot to the X Division title. Ishimori won in about 5 minutes. You probably wouldn't know, though, because half the time the camera was focused on Laurel Van Ness, Chelsea Green, whatever, being stupidly made up and drunk, and randomly going around the fans doing photos and sitting on their laps and whatever. Which I feel is a little bit of a shame, because from what I saw, Ishimori and Dukes were having a pretty good match. Or pretty decent match, I should say. But no. So then we had the Monsters Ball match. And normally when Monster Ball's match happens, I go to myself, this is where the pay-per-view turns, isn't it? Sadly, it was the third match on the card. So it was Grado and Abyss. They did a thing with Grado trying to say, oh, you know, come to your senses, Joseph. Which never happened. They had an average to poor hardcore match with the usual sort of barbed wire boards and tacks and all that sort of stuff and weapons. And then Laurel Van Ness got in and low-blowed Grado and basically sort of like Lou Thesz press punched him style moves because of the whole jilting at the altar thing. And then it went dark, and then here's Rosemary. And as soon as I saw the word decay on her arm, I was like, so rather than put her into sort of Taryn Terrell's place and make it an actual four-way, they used her for this. So she misted. She either took out or misted Laurel. So she went off. And then Abyss sort of, they had a stare down, and then he sort of grabbed her from the head, but then it was sort of like he was taken back to decay or whatever. So Rosemary got her mist ready, was going to miss Grado, which was being held by Abyss. Grado got out of the way, missed Abyss. Abyss chokeslams Rosemary into the tacks. Grado rolls up Abyss. 1, 2, kick out. And the timekeeper rings the bell. Despite the fact the match isn't over. And then there was a sloppy black hole slam into a barbed wire board. 1, 2, 3, and Abyss wins. So Grado's lost his work visa, so he has to leave the United States. The thing is, see, on paper, if you look at that, it's like, so he left ICW 4 months ago. Because obviously ICW and its things with WWE, it was like, well, we can't have this guy on because he's an Impact player. Quite literally. So that's why he went. So now they've got rid of him. The thing is, I think I've already seen the snag. They're going to announce, I think, that from now on, their home base for all their events, I mean, obviously they'll probably still do somewhat special shows somewhere. The events will be done in Canada. So, therefore, somehow, this means that the work visa can't be terminated because he's not in the US anyway. Therefore, meaning that this entire match in the feud was pointless. Keep that in mind, because I've somehow got a feeling that's going to be the angle they pull. And when they do, I'll be bloody livid and playing that Undertale music. And those of you that know when the Undertale music happens, you know that's where the blood begins to boil, if you will. So then we had the whole Team Impact, Team AAA. So it was El Hijo de Fantasma, Pagano, and Tejano from AAA, including Dorian Roldan coming out. Yeah, the guy that's such a great representative of the AAA company right now. The company that's struggling in terms of decent shows and putting on average pay-per-views. I still say the Psycho Clown Dr. Wagner match was very good, but like the rest of Triple Mania was crap. And you know, the other stuff in terms of managing it is a bit embarrassing. And then also on top of it, the fact that the team is, well, Tejano, which somewhat makes sense because Lucha Underground, but, well, sorry, no, Pagano, who's a hardcore wrestler but can't do anything in this because it's a standard match. So therefore, it's not really his style. And then the other two members are Hela de Fantasma and Tejano, who in AAA are like sworn enemies. And are doing all they can to make sure the other doesn't get before them in terms of like challenging for the world title and whatever. Yet somehow tonight, they're friends. I guess somewhat the same happened with EC3, Eddie Edwards and James Storm. But over the course of the match, it built to like, you know, EC3, you know, eventually, you know, earn the respect of James Storm and vice versa. And you know, he said, you know, he basically turned to Storm in the corner when they were going to the finish, and he just said, "Kick his effing head off." Tagged him in. Last call, got the win. Some reports say that's Storm's last ever match in the company because of the Ontario stuff. We'll have to see in terms of what happens in terms of the way it's working. Then we had LAX and OVE in the 51-50 street fight. So the Chris Brothers versus EYFBO. Before the match started, some LAX member who was clearly just some jobber that might have been dressed up like Homicide got whacked by a mysterious man who was clearly Sami Callihan. And they had a pretty good match. It was a crazy sort of like ECW dive off some scaffolding in this match. And then there was the unprotected chair shot. Now, you know, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but this is Impact Wrestling, not Lucha Underground or AAA, where they clearly don't give a damn about the safety and well-being of their wrestlers. Because if something happens at one of these things, and there is a concussion that leads to the end of somebody's career, and they go legal on their asses for allowing this to be booked, what happens then? And then the big surprise reveal that they were making a big thing on the commentary. The other thing that didn't help this is sort of the crowd were like, "Oh, it's Sami Callihan. Cool." It wasn't like a big sort of like Sami Callihan's here. And again, to me, it's like, so Sami, if you didn't know, has been in a long-term relationship with Jessica Havoc, aka Havoc. Considering how she's not been, I mean, neither negative nor positive about her experiences there, I'm sort of surprised he went. I understand, because it's the Chris Brothers and, you know, OI4K, which would be a much better name, because obviously you can't have killers in the name, because that's too threatening for television. And there wasn't that much of a reaction, which didn't help. Then we have the Triple Threat Women's match with Sienna defending against Gail Kim and Ali. I still don't get why Ali is still playing this sort of doty secretary that's stupid when Cherry Bomb is one of the most focused wrestlers that there is right now. There's a reason why she was WSU champ for so long. And the fact that she's just sort of a dotty character that, you know, is just learning to wrestle and whatever. But I guess that the most important thing is you did get sort of the the girlhood dream sort of deal come full circle. Just like Trish Stratus well, admittedly that was her hometown, which ironically is the same as Gail Kim's in Toronto. But at least it's the same, I guess, province of Ontario. I think, isn't it? Yeah, Ottawa, Ontario. Whoa. So it's the same province. 10 years on from when she was the inaugural Knockouts champion, she became 7-time champ once again. Oh, sorry. I think that's a record, yeah. The only person that's close is... No, that is the record, because Angelina Love held it 6 times, so with this win she makes even more history in terms of the win and everything. So, it was nice to see and everything. It was the right sort of finish. But then the really great bit was, oh look, she's celebrating this great thing, what a career, because it's supposed to be her last match. And then they just cut to a video package, practically. Like, no, they cut to a video package hyping up the Global Wrestling Network, where you can get all the Impact stuff for free, or you can spend $17.99 a month for premium so you don't get any adverts. And certain shows which are behind paywalls and whatever. Whoa. And then, actually, come to think of it, this is where I need to bring up the thing that I forgot about. Earlier on, before the Abyss Grado Monsters Ball match, Alberto El Patron showed up and cut a promo, which was sort of semi-shoot, in that it was basically railing against the former owners and whatever for doing what they did in terms of, getting rid of him because of the Page allegations and all that. And all the stuff there, which he says in the very sort of nervous promo, how he was cleared of, and there's no reports from the authorities that say the accusations made against him of domestic abuse and harassing and battery and all that sort of stuff never turned out to be true. And then he randomly just turned to JB and sort of was like going at him saying, why didn't you call me or text me afterwards? And I don't know. It was it was weirdly odd or oddly weird. One of the two. I really don't know. The only reason I bring this up is because I can't remember exactly the placement of this stuff. But then randomly on the ramp and then coming to sort of the commentators area is Jimmy Jacobs, which again, crowd reactions like, oh, it's a guy on the stage. I don't think because they sort of made it obvious, because from what I could tell, there weren't any sort of like big screens showing whatever was going on that people could see. They actually just had to literally rely on whatever it was that was there, so they probably just used the time to go for a break or whatever, because it was in between matches. And he went on sort of on the headsets and he's like, you know, what are you doing here? You don't work here. And they're like, yeah, funny you say that, and then walks off. And then Josh Matthews randomly, of course, goes, I better get a selfie with him. It's like, and the one thing I will say, Borash on commentary was good. Matthews, even on colour commentary, was way too much trying to get over. Which was weird because he was actually playing it somewhat straight. He wasn't going dramatically heel on too many things. You know, even when we get to the main event and the stuff that happens, he was like, you know, this can't be happening, this shouldn't be allowed. When logically you're thinking, okay, shouldn't, you know, because we're so used to sort of there being somebody that calls it straight and down the middle and whatever, and then the commentator sort of doing it to their own, the heel, if you will. Sort of like the Corey Graves or Booker T, whenever Booker T wants to flip-flop all he wants about people. Or certainly more the Byron Saxton being the good side and Corey Graves being the bad side, except when Cena's involved, in which case, nope. All that sort of stuff. Yeah, Matthews was just not good. He wasn't as bad as he was in the whole, you know, greatest commentator in the world angle that he was doing a few months back, but it says a lot that Borash, who doesn't have a lot of commentary experience, was better than him. And then we had the Six Sides of Steel Impact versus MMA thing, which amazingly the MMA people won. Remember, they're doing the whole thing of Bobby Lashley saying, I'm focusing on MMA, I'm not doing wrestling anymore. Worth noting, Bobby hasn't done any MMA match in about 14 months. And the fact that Dan Lambert, who's basically the figurehead of this American Top Team, I actually looked into the actual history of this. Dan Lambert is some sort of hotel executive. He isn't even sort of an MMA person himself. He's just got a lot of money. The weird thing is, he was one of the best people in it, because Colby Covington was on the show. This a week after the promo that he cut in Brazil last weekend, when he basically said Brazil was filthy animals, which led to basically him having to hop out the building early, otherwise he'd probably get murdered. And, yeah, the American Top Team guys were okay. Dan Lambert was pretty good. King Mo was not great. Lashley was okay. Moose was okay. Stephen Bonner was, I guess, okay. Although sometimes I think he was on cocaine because of the way he was sort of... It was like Ric Flair, but more of, rather than having too much cocaine, it was more like too much sugar. Like some of his spinning kicks, it was like, oh my god. Thank God I watched the UFC so I could actually watch good MMA. And it's like, for a weekend of MMA when big stuff happened in Bellator, which I'll talk about in another video. Obviously big stuff happened in UFC, I talked about it earlier. And then this, it's like, great job, guys. I'm not paying attention. And then, of course, that means, of course, the feud must continue, you'd have thought. Because, oh, yeah, the MMA guys beat the wrestler guys. And it's like, so that's the payoff, is it? The payoff is that wrestling is shit. Watch MMA. Great move, Impact. Do you want people not watching? And then Eli Drake versus Johnny Impact for the Global Championship. Pretty good match for about 10-15 minutes or so. Probably more like 15. The one thing I didn't note is that bloody Matthews kept saying, "Oh, we're going to the top rope. We're going to the top rope." That's the third time. That's the fourth time they've been to the top rope now. It's like, right. Thanks for reminding us that top rope stuff is usually shit. Including Eli Drake doing some aerial stuff where it's like, well, that isn't your repertoire. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. The tactics you were doing to stop Impact doing this stuff. You know, it's like with the PWG stuff. When Chuck Taylor took away the top rope of the ring to stop Ricochet from doing any top rope moves, just as in turn, Zack Sabre Jr. removing the bottom rope from the ring so Chuck couldn't reach out to break any submissions with the rope to make a rope break. But that all meant nothing, because then Alberto came in, attacked the crap out of Masters, attacked the crap out of Mundo, attacked Eli Drake with a belt, took Mundo, smacked him in the head with a chair, but one with the hands when he was sort of outside, and then for the actual finish of the match, in the ring, unprotected. So much so that the plastic back bit of the chair swung off, loose, because he smacked it that hard. And then Eli Drake is dragged on top of Johnny Impact by Alberto, and Eli Drake retains. Despite the fact earlier on in the show, he said, you know, he never lost the belt, and Eli Drake is a paper champion that doesn't deserve to have it. So why did he let him win? And it's like, okay, he's immediately coming back and being heel for stuff, and to be honest, considering all the reports that we've heard about his actions, not the Page stuff, even before that, some of his antics and stuff and behaviour with other promotions, not just the E, but like the AAA and the Lucha Underground stuff. It's sort of not preferential, I would say. And that's how they actually ended the pay-per-view. Well, actually, with the feed that I had, there was a graphic that said graphic titles, just all on a black screen with white text. And then they randomly showed Abyss's entrance again, and him coming down to the ring. I think because they're going to put graphics over the top of it, because when it happened live on the show, Abyss was apparently Ali. You know, the girl in the triple threat match. So, the other point about this is the fact that I had to watch this thing illegally, live, because they didn't decide to put it on live in the UK. They had it live in Portugal. They had it live in Germany. They had it live in India. They had it on a, 1 hour, I think, tape delay, maybe? In Israel. And then, from what I remember, it is basically airing on Monday night on the Spike channel, where obviously the stuff is broadcast at the minute over here. So basically, you know, with a somewhat 24-hour delay. give or take. The show was able to watch live through the Fight app and the Fight TV stuff. Only issue is, for me in the UK, they geo-blocked the feed. So even if I did want to pay to watch it, I couldn't. But then on top of that, and this is for a show which I really didn't care too much for after seeing it, the fact that it cost $40 to watch, to me, is utterly shocking. When, for $50 or $60 you had an incredible UFC show, and for the same amount of money you can get, like 5-6 months of WWE Network, 5-6 months of Shikaratopia, 5-6 months of Progress, 5-6 months of New Japan, all these other promotions. Free PWG DVDs, probably, if they're $20 each, because I think they are. Well, no, I guess 2. So I guess All-Star Weekend 1 and nights 1 and 2, maybe, whatever. Instead, you got a 3-hour show of which there was 1 or 2 decent to good matches, and the rest sort of had issues. A lot of issues. Also, apparently the tickets for the thing were only about $30 or $40 and $20, I think, for general admission. So it was cheaper for people to go in person to the show than to watch it on pay-per-view. I don't think that's how it's supposed to work. And apparently they're even having problems selling any tickets for the TV tapings that are happening over the next week, which will probably lead them into Christmas. So yes, it's going swimmingly. I honestly don't know how long Impact, GFW, TNA, whatever it decides to be called, whatever it's called now, whichever, it's on it. Tonight's show proved that even despite the changes, it's still on its last legs. It's really getting to the point now where Old Yeller has his finger on the trigger of the shotgun, but he's had it there for about 2 years. And he doesn't want to pull the trigger. But it's inevitable that sometime it has to happen. In which case, I really feel sorry for the people that were on this show. Because they did what they had to do. It's just, and most often, some of them weren't great at the executing the stuff, and some of the booking was very questionable, which is obviously not their deal. So I don't know. As you can tell, it's pretty late because I'm yawning a lot. All that's because the show nearly put me to sleep. There'll be more wrestling stuff from me later this week. I've got to catch up with the indies and the UFC stuff. I've got to catch up with the Raw stuff and everything. Also with the TV stuff. I think with some of the stuff I probably won't bother with, like recapping the last few weeks of Impact while I've been away. I do want to cover the Lucha Underground stuff because that's pretty major. Because obviously, it's the final episodes and it might never have come back. Plus, we've got the build-up to Survivor Series and NXT TakeOver War Games, Ring of Honor, New Japan, all that sort of stuff will be covered in various videos coming up over the next week or two. because I don't know how long it's going to take me to focus on to do all that with the other stuff that I've got going on here at home. I know there's some sip and snacks which will probably be coming as well, just so I can get them out of the way and so they're there for you to enjoy. All that sort of stuff's there. The podcast should be coming back soon in the next few weeks, especially considering we got the Oscar prediction stuff for the month of November and all that, so we shall be seeing what goes on with that stuff and everything. So, considering it is the UK show, I'm guessing until tomorrow, boys and girls, that's all I've got to say about that. I'm leaving this bit in because apparently it was good enough for TNA to leave outtakes in at the end or cock-ups, so there you go.